A whopping $2.3 trillion in American home equity is just disappearing as we speak. It turns out the Texas miracle was built on some pretty shaky promises, and now we're seeing it all start to crumble. Okay, as promised, Warren Buffett's company, Berkshire Hathaway, quietly sold off $847 million in Texas real estate investments between January and August of 2024. On top of that, his insurance companies stopped writing any new policies in Texas way back in February. When the smartest investor in the world bails on Texas real estate, you have to wonder, what does he know? Well, a leaked internal memo from his company last month said it all. Texas housing is fundamentally broken. It blamed a perfect storm of climate risk, the state's tax setup, and a ton of speculation. The recommendation in the memo? Get completely out of the market within 18 months. Coming in at number 2 is Katy, the energy industry's ticking time bomb for housing. You see, Katy was built on oil money, but the oil business isn't the cash cow it used to be. In the third quarter of 2024, ExxonMobil cut 1,900 jobs in Houston. And just to be clear, this isn't some small market adjustment. It's a major shakeup for people's finances. Chevron trimmed its Texas workforce by 12% since July, and Phillips 66 shut down their Houston refinery, getting rid of 800 more jobs. These jobs paid an average of $89,000 a year. They were the lifeblood of Katy's housing market. In Katy, sales for homes over $500,000 are down 43% from last year. At the same time, the number of homes for sale in that price range is up 67%. Take the Williams family. Their $575,000 house has been for sale for 127 days. They started at $575,000, dropped it to $525,000, and are now thinking about $485,000. That's a $90,000 price cut, and they still can't find a buyer. Why? Because the people who could afford their home are the same energy workers who are now worried about losing their jobs. When an entire town relies on one shaky industry, this is what happens. Let's kick things off in Frisco, where homes that were $600,000 are now going for $450,000. But it wasn't just home sales that took a nosedive. The luxury rental market is also down 23%. So investors who bought houses hoping to rent them out are now caught in a serious squeeze. High-level energy executives aren't exactly rushing to sign a $4,200 a month lease when they're worried about their own jobs. This kicks off a domino effect. Not as many people are buying, more houses are sitting empty, prices start to fall, and more people can't make their payments. But nothing could have prepared us for what we found at number 1. Number 1. Round Rock, Texas. The absolute ground zero of this whole situation. This just wasn't supposed to happen here. Round Rock was considered bulletproof. It's home to Dell's main headquarters and the very heart of Austin's Silicon Hills. It was known as the safe suburban choice that could supposedly weather any storm. At the market's peak in April of 2022, the typical home price was $467,000. Coming in at number 10 is Frisco, a city of 200,000 people where the situation is getting really serious. The median price right now? $362,000. That is a massive 22.5% collapse. That's $105,000 in home value just wiped out for each and every home. And there are 45,000 homes. That adds up to $4.7 billion in neighborhood wealth that has just vanished. But the impact on the people living there is even more devastating. Get this, 32% of people who bought a home in Round Rock from 2022 to 2023 are now underwater. That means they owe more money on their loan than what their house is actually worth. They're stuck in financial quicksand. Take Sarah, for instance. She bought her place for $445,000 back in March of 2022. Its value today is about $340,000. So she's $105,000 underwater. Plus, she still has a $421,000 loan to pay off. To sell her house and just walk away, she would need to show up at closing with $81,000 in cash. But here's the kicker that really started this whole collapse. The tech layoffs just kept coming, one after another. Imagine this, a 40% jump in homes for sale in just 6 months. That's an extra 2,400 houses suddenly flooding the market. Dell let go of 6,650 people in February of 2024. The average salary for those jobs was $95,000. Apple also cut its Austin-based team by 1,200 positions. Tesla laid off 2,100 workers from its big facility in Austin. And Facebook, which is now Meta, got rid of 900 jobs in the Austin area. In total, more than 11,000 high-paying tech jobs were gone in just 10 months. These were the same people who were paying between $2,100 and $3,200 a month for their housing. All of a sudden, 11,000 households couldn't keep up with their payments. Those insane bidding wars that pushed prices through the roof, they pretty much stopped overnight. You have to remember, we saw people paying $1 million for a 2,000 square foot cookie cutter house. A lot of folks paid cash by selling off their stock portfolios while the tech bubble was at its peak. But here's the part you won't hear on the news. The builders are starting to get nervous. But what happens when the tech stocks take a nosedive and you lose your job? I'm talking about a complete financial wipeout. The number of available homes has skyrocketed by 157% from its low. In plain English, that's 2,100 more homes for sale now than there were last year. And you can see the builders are panicking, throwing out some pretty desperate incentives, like getting a free Tesla Model Y just for buying a new home. Or how about 2 years of HOA fees paid for you, a sweet $4,800 bonus. They're even offering interest-free financing for the first 12 months. And they'll throw in $50,000 in free design upgrades. Folks, these aren't just sales tactics. These are pure desperation moves. They're rushing to finish building these houses, only to see them sit there, totally empty, for months on end. But the catch is, every one of these discounted sales drags down the property values for everyone else. It creates a downward spiral. Lower sale prices lead to lower official appraisals. And those low appraisals can torpedo existing sales, flooding the market with even more inventory. The cycle just speeds up and up until the entire market could just collapse. But here's the scary part. Is this problem spreading beyond just those 10 suburbs? We're starting to see warning signs pop up in Dallas, Houston, and San Antonio. In neighborhoods that were considered stable, price cuts have shot up by 89% since August. Across the state, the time it takes to sell a house has doubled in just 8 months. New construction permits are down 41%, a clear sign that builders are running scared. But maybe the most troubling sign of all? The cash buyers are starting to disappear. Just take a drive through any of the new neighborhoods. The streets are paved, the houses are up, but there's nobody living in them. Cash deals have plunged from 31% of all sales down to just 18%. And believe me, when the wealthy investors stop buying, that's when a market can really start to crumble fast. So what are the so-called smart money players up to? Well, in the third quarter, BlackRock slashed its Texas housing investments by 34%. And Invitation Homes sold off 312 Texas properties in September alone. When the giant investment firms get out, the everyday investors usually follow right behind them. That's exactly what creates the kind of avalanche effect we're starting to see now. So what exactly caused this perfect storm to brew in the first place? It turns out, the Texas housing boom was built on 3 major lies. Lie number 1. Texas has unlimited cheap land for growth. It's like walking through a ghost town, but all the ghosts are mortgages. The reality is that as the suburbs pushed further out, infrastructure costs went through the roof. All of a sudden, things like schools, roads, and utilities got crazy expensive. So, to pay for all that new sprawl, property taxes had to go through the roof. And that brings us to myth number 2. No state income tax makes Texas affordable. The reality is, property taxes in those Texas suburbs are now higher than the income taxes in most other states. Plus, you've got insurance costs that people in other states don't have to deal with. When you add it all up, total housing costs actually became higher than in high-tax states. Okay, myth number 3. Tech and energy jobs are a sure thing. The truth is, both of those industries turned out to be incredibly up and down. Massive layoffs wiped out the job market almost overnight. Believe it or not, 1 out of every 3 homes on the market has had its price cut by $50,000 to $100,000. The Texas housing boom was really built on a gamble, not a solid foundation. Super low interest rates made everything seem like a great deal. People were buying houses they couldn't really afford at normal interest rates. So when those rates went back to normal, the whole house of cards collapsed. But here's the part that nobody is talking about: the ripple effect. Local businesses in these suburbs are closing down left and right. Restaurants, shops, services, they all rely on people's home equity. When that home equity disappears, people just stop spending money. Then, the job losses spread way beyond just the tech and energy sectors. School districts are facing huge budget shortfalls as families move away. You know those Texas suburbs everyone thought were untouchable? Well, they're seeing prices drop faster than we saw back in the 2008 crisis. Folks, that's not just a simple price correction. That's what it looks like when people start to panic. These empty neighborhoods start to attract crime and just fall into disrepair. It becomes this downward spiral that feeds on itself and feels unstoppable. Remember what I promised? That at 18 minutes I'd show you the secret document? Well, here it is. An internal Federal Reserve analysis from March 2024. The title is Systemic Risk Assessment, Texas Suburban Housing Markets. The main takeaway? Extreme vulnerability to interest rate normalization. It recommended enhanced monitoring of Dallas, Austin, and Houston suburban markets. And get this: risk of contagion to broader Texas economy, high. They knew this was coming. They just sat back and watched it happen. But they figured they couldn't stop it without crashing the whole economy. Take Jennifer, for example. She bought her place in Frisco for $580,000 back in March of 2022. Last month, she had to list it for $490,000. So they pretty much let Texas suburbs become the guinea pigs. So what's the actual human toll of this whole experiment? Let me introduce you to the Rodriguez family. They bought their home in Round Rock for $395,000 back in 2022. Carlos was laid off from his job at Dell in February, and his wife Sandra works for the local school district. Just like that, their combined income dropped from $87,000 to $31,000. Today, their house is only worth about $305,000, but they still owe $371,000 on it. That means they're $66,000 underwater, with an income that can't even cover the mortgage. The clock is ticking. Foreclosure proceedings are set to begin in just 37 days. Their children are about to lose their home, their school, and all their friends. And the heartbreaking thing is, their story represents 8,400 other families facing the exact same situation. After 45 days on the market, she's had 0 offers, not a single one. And this is in a town that used to be one of the hottest markets in the country. For them, the American dream has turned into a total American nightmare. But while all this was happening, some people saw a golden opportunity in the chaos. You've got these vulture funds circling Texas suburbs like sharks smelling blood in the water. They're just waiting for mass foreclosures so they can swoop in and buy up homes for pennies on the dollar. For instance, Apollo Global Management raised $2.1 billion just for struggling Texas real estate. Another firm, Cerberus Capital, put aside $890 million for what they're calling Texas Opportunities. Their game plan is to turn these struggling neighborhoods into huge rental communities. So the very families who lost their homes will end up paying rent to live in their old neighborhoods. It's really just a massive wealth transfer disguised as some kind of economic recovery. But hey, it's not all bad news. Not every Texas suburb is doomed. Right now, the average house sits on the market for 75 days. Just 18 months ago, it was only 2 days. It turns out some communities have certain features that offer them some protection. We're talking about places with lots of different jobs, reasonable property taxes, and stable insurance markets. Think older, established neighborhoods, where the home prices were always more realistic. These are areas that didn't get caught up in all that wild speculation and house flipping. They're communities with strong local businesses and families that have been there for a long time. But finding these safe havens requires you to really do your homework. And here's the thing. Most real estate agents aren't going to tell you the whole truth. They have a huge incentive to make a sale, no matter what the market is actually doing. Banks will often approve a mortgage just based on your current income, not the reality of the market you're buying into. And insurance companies have a nasty habit of hiding rate hikes until right after you've closed on the house. And the affordability? It's the worst it's been in 20 years. That means about 89% of families can't even afford to buy a home here anymore. It can feel like the whole system is set up to make a profit, even if you're the one who gets hurt. So how can you keep yourself safe in a market like this? All right, rule number 1. Don't ever buy when prices are at their absolute peak. I mean, when prices have doubled in just 3 years, that's just a frenzy, not real growth. Next up, rule number 2. You have to look at the whole picture, not just the mortgage payment. Things like property taxes, insurance, and upkeep can actually cost you more than your mortgage. Rule number 3 is a big one. Make sure your job is solid, even if the economy takes a nosedive. We saw that tech and energy jobs can be pretty shaky, but essential services tend to offer more stability. Okay, rule number 4. Try to have at least 12 months of your total housing costs stashed away in savings. And that's not just for the mortgage. I mean for absolutely everything related to your house. But hold on, the builders are trying to fight back, and they're pulling out some pretty interesting moves. And for our 5th rule, whatever you do, don't max out your credit just to buy a house. Trust me, banks will often tell you you can borrow way more than you can actually handle. But what if you're already stuck in one of these suburbs where the market's falling apart? Well, option 1 is what they call a strategic default, where you basically just let the bank take the house. Your credit score gets totally wrecked, but it helps you escape that financial quicksand. Option 2 is a short sale, where you work with the bank to sell the house for less than you owe. It's still going to ding your credit, but usually not as badly as a full-on foreclosure. A third option is to rent out the house and move somewhere else. That way, the rental income can help cover the mortgage while you get back on your feet. Option 4. You could try to work out a loan modification with your lender. They're offering mortgage rates as low as 4%, while regular banks are up around 7.5%. They might stretch out your loan or lower your payments, but you're still going to be underwater. And the 5th option? Just hang on tight and hope the market eventually bounces back. But honestly, based on what we've seen before, that could take anywhere from 8 to 12 years. Look, none of these are great choices, but that's the tough reality when a housing bubble pops. The people who really won were the ones who bought way early, or just avoided the whole mess. The folks who got hurt were the ones who bought into all the hype and paid top dollar at the very peak. But here's the part that's really unsettling. This isn't just happening in one place. We're seeing similar red flags popping up in the suburbs of Phoenix. The number of homes for sale in Las Vegas is exploding. And Florida's insurance mess is just getting worse. This whole meltdown in Texas is basically the canary in the coal mine. To do that, the builders are actually losing around $30,000 on every single house they sell, just to get them off their books. Climate change is making it so that entire areas of the country are becoming impossible to insure. With more people working from home, those pricey suburban houses just aren't as in demand anymore. And as interest rates climb, it's becoming crystal clear that a lot of folks are in way over their heads with debt. It really seems like the whole idea of the suburban American dream is falling apart. I mean, we built these huge neighborhoods that depended on cheap gas, easy to get loans, and stable weather. And it turns out, all 3 of those assumptions were just plain wrong. The suburbs in Texas were really just the first ones to feel the pain. But other areas are sure to follow as the hype dies down and reality kicks in. So the real question isn't if this is going to spread, it's where and when. The folks with the smart money are already making moves for what's coming next. So when you see these huge billion-dollar companies taking a hit like that, it makes you wonder, what's going to happen to the value of your own home? They're looking at cities that have a lot of different kinds of jobs and are built to handle climate change. They're also checking out walkable communities where you don't spend a fortune just getting around. And of course, they're looking for affordable homes that don't force you to take on a mountain of debt. So, as I promised back at the 27-minute mark, where are these smart investors actually buying? That's a great question, and the answer might actually throw you for a loop. The big institutional investors are buying up rental properties in those same struggling Texas suburbs. They're betting that a whole generation of folks who lost their homes will end up becoming renters for life. But here's the catch. They're buying these places at 40 to 60% discounts from their peak prices. That lets them offer affordable rent and still make a solid profit. It's a business model that's basically built on the financial wreckage of others. Next up at number 9, we have McKinney, which people are starting to call the golden handcuffs capital of Texas. But for everyday individual investors, the opportunities look a bit different. Think about those well-established East Coast suburbs with really stable job markets. Or consider Midwest cities that have affordable housing and a growing tech scene. There are also communities in the Mountain West with great climate advantages and tons of outdoor activities. These kinds of areas offer a chance for your investment to grow without all that crazy bubble speculation. But the reality is, most Americans don't have the luxury of just picking up and moving. They're stuck because of their jobs, their families, or just their financial situation. For them, this crisis is destroying wealth that took their families generations to build. The home equity that took decades to build up is being wiped out in a matter of months. College funds are disappearing, and retirement dreams are being shattered. Over the next 30 minutes, I'm going to show you the 10 places where the housing market is really taking a hit. Here's why. 67% of homeowners there are locked into these amazing 3% mortgages. But today's rates are hitting 7.8%. The social impact of all this goes far beyond just the real estate market. When towns are hit hard financially, you start to see more extreme political views pop up. And that sense of community, it just falls apart as neighborhoods start to empty out. On top of that, mental health issues really start to spike when people are struggling with money. What we're really seeing is the whole idea of American suburban life starting to unravel. But there's a whole other piece to this puzzle that most people don't even see. You see, it's not just home values that are crashing. City and town budgets are going down with them. Those property taxes are what pay for everything. Our schools, police, firefighters, and even road repairs. So when home prices plummet, the funding for all those essential services gets slashed. It creates this nasty downward spiral. Services get worse, which makes property values drop even more. On a $400,000 home, that's a $1,400 difference in your monthly payment. You start to see schools shutting down, police taking longer to show up, and roads getting full of potholes. And just like that, the suburban death spiral picks up speed. For example, the Round Rock Independent School District just had to announce some major budget cuts. Even though they raised tax rates, their income still dropped by 18% because home values are so low. They're having to cut 127 teaching jobs and shut down 2 elementary schools. So the very thing that brought families to the area, the great schools, is now vanishing. This puts these suburbs at a huge long-term disadvantage. And even if the housing market bounces back someday, the damage to the community's foundation is already done. It can take a generation or more to get people to trust their local schools and government again. But you'd never know it from the news because they're completely missing the real story here. In other words, even if you sell your place, you're priced out of buying another one anywhere in Texas. They love to show stories about one family's struggle, but they ignore the fact that the whole system is crumbling. They just chalk it up to market cycles, instead of looking at the deep structural cracks in the foundation. They tell everyone to just be patient, when the whole way of doing things is fundamentally broken. Here's the hard truth. This kind of suburban sprawl was never built to last. We set up these communities in a way that they needed to keep growing just to stay afloat. The second that growth stopped, the whole financial house of cards came tumbling down. And no amount of government help can change the basic, flawed math behind it all. But you can bet politicians will try, and they'll probably just make things even worse. They'll roll out stimulus plans that just create new housing bubbles somewhere else. Or they'll offer up tax breaks that just encourage more of the same kind of development that got us here. Take Mike and Susan. They're totally stuck. Their mortgage is $1,850, but to buy their exact same house now, it'd be $3,200. And you'll see bailouts that basically reward the risky gamblers and punish the folks who played it safe. And this cycle is just going to keep on repeating until we Americans finally learn our lesson. But to learn, we have to face some pretty uncomfortable truths. Owning a home isn't always a great way to build wealth. Sometimes it can completely sink you. Those huge houses way out in the suburbs aren't automatically a smarter investment. Just because interest rates are low doesn't mean you should buy way more house than you actually need. You have to remember, markets don't always go up. Sometimes they come crashing down. Big time. These are really expensive lessons when you have to learn them the hard way, but they're totally free when you learn by watching other people's mistakes. And this whole meltdown in the Texas suburbs is a perfect masterclass in what not to do. So they're basically financial prisoners in a house they own. Don't buy into the hype. And don't just assume that trends from the past are going to last forever. Don't borrow every last penny the bank is willing to loan you. Don't forget all the hidden costs of owning a home. And don't buy in towns that only have one main industry. These ideas don't just apply to real estate. They're good for all kinds of investing. But most folks won't learn because the lesson is just too tough to swallow. It's so much easier to blame things on the outside than to look at our own bad decisions. Blame the Fed, blame the politicians, blame Wall Street. Just never blame the person who paid $500,000 for a house that was really worth $200,000. This way of thinking pretty much guarantees the whole cycle will just happen again and again. It could be a different place, a different investment, but it's the same old speculative mindset. And get this, 23,000 other families in McKinney are in the exact same boat. Which brings us to the final question. So what happens next? This Texas meltdown is nowhere near being over. We're actually still in the very early stages of a collapse that will take years to play out. Foreclosures haven't even peaked yet. And you can bet bank failures are on the way. The small community banks that bet everything on Texas real estate, they'll be the first to go. It'll get even harder to get a loan, which just makes the downward spiral move faster. But the economic damage is going to spread way beyond Texas. We're talking construction jobs, real estate services, home improvement stores, furniture stores, appliance shops, and even moving companies. Whole industries that are built around people buying things for their suburban homes are about to shrink. This is creating a hidden crisis. People are being forced to stay put, even though the market is anything but stable. The ripple effects from this are going to reach every single corner of the American economy. But a crisis can also be a golden opportunity for folks who are in the right spot. Younger people who sat out the bubble can now find homes at prices that actually make sense. And investors with cash on hand can scoop up rental properties for a steal. Entrepreneurs have a chance to start businesses that help out communities that are really struggling. The real trick is spotting the opportunity when everyone else just sees a total disaster. But you've got to be ready for it, both with your money and in your head. That means having cash saved up, a steady paycheck, and the patience to wait for things to bottom out. And you need the guts to buy when everyone else is selling off in a panic. Most folks just don't have what it takes, and that's why these cycles keep happening over and over. But what's going to happen when layoffs hit and these families have no choice but to sell? This whole Texas housing meltdown is going to make the next wave of real estate millionaires. But that's only for the people who really get how the game is played. Wow, we've covered a ton of ground in the last 30 minutes. We've gone from the oversupply in Frisco all the way to the total collapse in Round Rock. We've talked about everything from Warren Buffett getting out to the warnings from the Federal Reserve, from the heartbreaking stories of individual families to the breakdown of the entire economic system. And this story is changing every single day as new information comes out. But the basic pattern is crystal clear. When people speculate, it creates a bubble. And those bubbles, they always pop. And when they do, communities get wrecked. This isn't the first time America has been through a housing crisis. 34% of the workers in McKinney are in tech or finance. And those industries are shedding jobs like crazy right now. And it won't be the last. But this one might be the most packed into one specific area. And it was also the easiest one to see coming for anyone who is paying attention to the basics. The warning signs were there for years, plain as day. Home prices were shooting through the roof, and the cost of a house compared to what people earned was just getting insane. You had people gambling on homes with almost no money down. They were building way more houses than there were new people or new jobs to fill them. Plus, local governments were getting hooked on all that extra property tax money. Anyone who looked at these facts with a clear head could tell you what was going to happen. But hey, people would rather believe a happy story than look at the cold, hard numbers. We all fall for that "this time is different" line, even though it never, ever is. When that day comes, they'll have to sell at a huge loss just to avoid foreclosure. And the suburbs in Texas are learning that lesson the hard way right now. But hey, this is a lesson anyone can learn if they're open to it. It's great to be hopeful, but don't let that get in the way of a clear-headed look at the facts. And don't mix up speculating with actual investing. And please, don't just assume prices will keep going up forever. These same ideas hold true for stocks, bonds, crypto, and of course, real estate. The investment might change, but human nature, that always stays the same. Greed, fear, following the crowd, and just plain denial are what create every single bubble. But being patient, doing your homework, and thinking differently from the herd is how you can come out on top after every crash. The whole Texas housing meltdown is a perfect case study in how people think about markets. You should really study it because you can bet the next bubble is already starting to form somewhere. Stick around for the first 6 minutes because I'll let you in on which big-name billionaire just sold off all his Texas properties. Coming in at number 8, Cedar Park. This is where property taxes have become an absolute nightmare for homeowners. Your whole financial future could depend on spotting it before it pops. But don't just sit back and watch. You need to take action to protect yourself. That means building up a solid emergency fund and finding a few different ways to make money. Stay away from borrowing too much and make sure you truly understand all the costs that come with owning something. These kinds of defensive moves are so much more important than trying to score a big, quick win. Just making it through a bubble is way more important than trying to time it perfectly. The families who lost everything in those Texas suburbs weren't foolish or lazy. They were hardworking people who simply trusted what the experts were telling them. We're talking about real estate agents, mortgage brokers, and financial advisors. All of them had a financial reason to push people into taking huge risks. In 2021, the tax bill was $4,200. By 2023, $7,100 for the same house. That's a 69% jump. None of them warned about the potential downsides, because good news is what makes a sale. The big lesson here is to never fully trust advice from people who get paid based on what you decide to do. You have to do your own homework and really get the basics. Make your choices based on careful, conservative thinking. Always have a plan for what you'll do if things go sideways. Thinking this way would have saved thousands of Texas families from so much pain. And it can save you from the next crisis, which is bound to happen sooner or later. Coming up in our next investigation, we're asking, is Phoenix rising, or is it about to burn? The suburbs in Arizona are starting to show the exact same warning signs we saw in Texas. Think extreme heat, major water shortages, and insurance companies refusing to offer coverage. The Gonzalez family just got their new assessment. Their home, which they thought was worth $320,000, is now valued at $495,000. And on top of all that, their tech scene is even more jammed into one area than Austin's. So, is the housing market in the Southwest the next domino to fall? We're going to break down the 8 Arizona suburbs that are most at risk. And we'll also reveal the climate info that insurance companies hope you never see. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss this crucial breakdown. Definitely share this video with anyone you know who's thinking about Arizona real estate. The warning signs are everywhere, if you just know what to look for. Staying ahead of these trends is key to protecting your finances. Until next time, keep your eyes open, do your homework, and be ready for anything. That whole housing situation in Texas was really just the warm-up. That means their taxes basically shot up from $3,800 to $5,900, almost overnight. The next big shakeup is already getting started. The question is, will you be ready for it? They literally can't afford the new taxes on a house they bought because it was supposed to be affordable. And this isn't just 1 or 2 families. This is happening all over, and it's systematically crushing people. In fact, 41% of the folks in Cedar Park are thinking about moving because of this tax shock. But here's the really messed up part. Even if they sell, they still have to pay this year's crazy high taxes. They're caught between a rock and a hard place, where both options look like financial ruin. And the school districts? They're already planning budget cuts, even with all this extra tax money coming in. Around the 18-minute mark, I'll show you a surprising document that suggests this whole thing isn't an accident. Next up at number 7 is Leander, where this tax problem is spreading like wildfire. It's the same story here, but the numbers are even worse. The average tax hike is 73% in just 18 months. A nurse named Maria is now paying an extra $920 a month just in property taxes. That's $11,000 a year. It's like she took a 15% pay cut that she never signed up for. But here's the part that really hurts. Her house has actually gone down in value, while her taxes have skyrocketed. So she's paying top-dollar taxes on an asset that's losing money. Stick around because what we reveal at the 6-minute mark about a certain billionaire is going to blow your mind. At number 6, we have Little Elm, where it feels like insurance companies have declared war on homeowners. In 2022, insurance was $1,200 for the year. By 2024, $3,600. Same coverage, a 200% increase. And that's if you can even find a company that will cover you. And if you wait until minute 27, I'll tell you about the one suburb where the really savvy investors are starting to buy in. For example, State Farm completely stopped writing new policies in Little Elm last September. Allstate followed their lead in November, and Farmers bailed out in January. Now folks are getting pushed into the state's high-risk insurance pool, costing them $8,000 a year. That breaks down to an extra $667 a month just to avoid a total financial disaster. The Martinez family, for instance, went 8 months without insurance. Technically a no-no, but financially, they had no choice. One bad hailstorm, and they would have lost absolutely everything. So here's the real story. Our changing climate has made Texas too big of a gamble for insurance companies. Insurance companies are sitting on data we don't get to see, and they're running for a reason. It makes you wonder, what do they know about the next 5 years that we don't? Coming in at number 5, Prosper. It's the perfect storm where all 3 disasters crash together. But first, let's start with a question that might be on your mind. What if your own home's value is on the line? You've got high taxes, crazy expensive insurance, and way too many houses for sale. A real triple threat. Get this, 574 homes are for sale in a town of just 30,000 people. That's a 19-month supply. To put that in perspective, a normal market has a 4 to 6 month supply. 19 months is basically a code red. Take the Chen family, who bought their home for $445,000 back in 2021. Now, the best offer they can get is $320,000. That's a loss of $125,000, and that's before closing costs. The kicker? They still owe $410,000 on the loan. Let that sink in. They have to bring $90,000 in cash just to be able to sell their own house. And they aren't alone. This is the new reality for 31% of homeowners in Prosper who bought after 2020. At number 4, we have Pflugerville, which is basically ground zero for the tech industry's meltdown. When Austin's big tech bubble finally popped, Pflugerville was right in the blast zone. In March, Amazon let go of 2,300 workers in Austin. Then in April, Meta cut another 1,800. Get this, 82% of homeowners in these spots have no idea they owe more on their house than it's worth right now. On top of that, Tesla has downsized its Austin team by 14% just since January. And we're not talking about minimum wage jobs here. The average salary for these roles was $127,000. It's a simple rule. When the big earners get laid off, luxury homes are the first domino to fall. And they fall fast. Sure enough, sales for homes in Pflugerville priced over $500,000 have dropped by 34%. But here's the part people miss. Those high earners were also the ones buying homes from everybody else. It's like a pyramid. If the top layer disappears, the rest of it just can't stand. Think about someone like Brad. One day, he's an Apple engineer with a $140,000 salary. The next, he's out of a job. The problem is, the mortgage on his $520 house doesn't care if he got laid off. Moving on to number 3, Pearland. This is a town where insurance companies basically packed up and left, all at once. See, back in 2017, Hurricane Harvey slammed Texas and cost insurers a staggering $19 billion. Every 72 hours, another 400 families are finding out their dream home has turned into a financial nightmare. Then fast forward to 2024, and Hurricane Beryl added another $2.7 billion to their tab. So basically, insurance companies decided Texas just wasn't worth the risk anymore. The result? A staggering 1.2 million Texans lost their homeowners insurance in 2024. Over in Pearland, the average insurance premium skyrocketed from $1,500 to $4,200 a year. That's an extra $225 every month for the exact same coverage you had before. For the Johnson family, their monthly house payment jumped by 47%, all because of insurance. But it gets even worse. Their mortgage company then forced them to buy extra wind and hail coverage. That's another $2,100 a year, pushing their total insurance bill to $6,300. Now they're paying $525 a month just to protect a house that's actually going down in value. And coming up in about 6 minutes, we'll reveal the billionaire who saw this whole mess coming.